Hello, everyone, and welcome along to another edition of the Agenda podcast on the Blood Red channel with myself, Patrick Smith. We've got something a little bit different for you today. We're going to be transitioning from football reporters to teachers today as we're handing out the midterm or mid-season, in this instance, reports for the Liverpool squad. As we're basically halfway through the season, I feel it's the right time to give out some ratings. Well, joining me to provide these markings, we've got a Liverpool Echo dynamic duo. Firstly, we've got Keifer MacDonald. Keifer, are you going to be good cop or bad cop today with these gradings?
There'll be a few generous ones, but I think given the start of the season that Liverpool have had, though, there might be a few that are a bit underwhelming, and maybe people can be doing better in the second half of the season. Might need a bit of self-reflection during the World Cup break, and maybe achieve those target grades come May.
Yeah, maybe things will change for them. We're also joined by Rich Garnett. Rich, you seem like someone who wouldn't shy away from giving a Liverpool player some stern words in a parents' evening, or have I got that one wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. I'm going to play the role of the bitter old teacher who doesn't mind a pint at lunchtime and has been in the role for far too long. All decorum's gone out the window. I'm going to tell it as it is, I think.
What a lovely duo we've got for this one then. Well, let's waste no further time. Let's get straight into it. Their mid-season review. We're going to work through the team chronologically from back to front, so there's no other place to start than the goalkeepers. Rich, I'll come to you first on this one. We had a typically excellent cameo from Keifer Kelleher. I feel it's a bit harsh to grade him season off one game, but I think we're all going to give him an A-star just for the shootout. So let's move on to Alisson Becker. How are you rating his season so far?
Well, despite what I just said about being a harsh teacher, Alisson Becker is probably one of the standout performers of the season for me so far. The very fact that a keeper of the quality of Kelleher is limited to nothing more than a cameo cup appearance is a measure of how consistent the Brazilian's been for many years. And if you look at some of Liverpool's games this season, obviously they've lost games they expected to win, but I think in many circumstances the situation could have been a lot more dire had it not been for Alisson and the saves that he's pulled off. He's just an incredible keeper. He's certainly the best goalkeeper I've ever seen play for Liverpool, and I started going in the late 80s, so from Grobler onwards, really. So there'll be a few older heads that'll point to Clement, but only really seen him on old videos, old VHSs. That's a tape cassette, Keifer, just so you wondered. I'm a big Alisson fan. And long may his superiority between Liverpool sticks continue, because he's a calming influence. He's like a father figure, isn't he? You trust him. I trust him to hold my own baby. It's an A for me for Alisson, definitely.
There's the headline for the podcast there. Trust him to hold my baby. Keith, I'll move on to you. I presume you'll similarly grade Alisson rather highly, but we'll move on to the outfield players as well once you spoke a little bit on Alisson with the fullbacks. And we're going to begin with those because I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to be the main talking point, one of the main talking points from this podcast. Going to keep it short and sweet for you, Keifer. Discuss Trent Alexander-Arnold's season.
Yeah, I think it's anything but short and sweet. There's been plenty of discussions. I think it's seemingly kind of everyone's had their own opinion on Trent this season. And, while he probably hasn't hit the heights, that we've seen in recent years in terms of, going forward as well, but also, normally with Trent, obviously, what you do get in attack, you might lose in defence, with a couple of goals a season. But I think, since he kind of came into the team in, 2016, 2017, I think everyone's kind of understood that and understood his role, and kind of he's been the creative nucleus of this Liverpool side. And he's been key to kind of everything they've achieved under Jurgen Klopp. And like I said, whilst he hasn't maybe generated the numbers he would have liked to in attacking, areas this season, obviously it's his defensive lapses in concentration this season that have maybe cost him. And I think he'd be the first to put his hand up and say that he hasn't performed to that level that has maybe been expected of him. But I think I'm not sure exactly why or what's triggered it in recent years. Maybe it's the whole kind of England debate, but I think certainly this year, I think the criticism has unfairly gone up a notch on Trent. And whilst the performance in Napoli, to kind of highlight one, and the game at Old Trafford as well, they've been far from his finest performances in a Liverpool shirt. And we certainly know we expect better of him defensively. But I think this is what Gary Neville said last weekend after the game at Tottenham, and kind of said that in a World Cup game where games can be decided in a single moment, in a single knockout game, you wouldn't really trust Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I think that is kind of just nonsense in itself. This is a man who won Liverpool a European, Cup semi-final with a split second of genius, and people seem to forget that. But yeah, no, I'm not exactly sure why the criticism has gone up a notch. Like I say, there's plenty of factors why he probably hasn't, played to the level close to his ability at times this season. I mean, the biggest one, obviously, looking at his kind of output in the last 3 or 4 years, and I don't think it's uncommon for these young players, the likes of Marcus Rashford and to maybe a greater extent Dele Alli, in terms of they've had these they've burst onto the scene and played so many games at such a young age, and maybe that hasn't been the best thing for their development in the long term. And you kind of looked at Rashford maybe took a couple of seasons off, if you want to call it like that, and he struggled. Obviously, Ali's had his struggles on a bigger kind of scale, but he has played so many games, and like I say, last season Liverpool played 63 games in all competition, and he probably played north of 50 of those. So I think with a lad who's got the World Cup on his horizons as well, I think his calendar has been jam-packed this year, from January to December. Again, he probably would have played 50, 55 games, which is just an absolute ludicrous amount, which obviously goes to a bigger problem. But, like I say, he's still an unbelievable player, and in my opinion, on his day, arguably the best fullback in the world. And I don't think that changes, certainly doesn't change overnight. And I think it's also as well, this has been a Liverpool side that, again, at times Trent hasn't had that protection on the right-hand side of midfield. It's been a Liverpool side that in defence as well, even Virgil van Dijk has been off it at times this season. We've seen the highs that Joe Gomez has gone to, followed by the lows and kind of some poor displays as well. So I certainly don't think Trent is alone, and I certainly don't. The digging out that he's kind of suffered in recent weeks and months, I think is severely unfair. But again, like I say, he's he will be expecting more of himself in the second half of the season, and hopefully he can kind of prove those doubters wrong, and prove that that level that he once was at, and kind of return to that, and show why he got all those plaudits so early on in his career, and was so integral to Liverpool's success last season.
Yeah, he's an amazing player there, which is a bit of a tricky start for him. What grade are you going to give him though, Keifer?
I would say purely just because of the high standards he set himself. If we're saying at C, a grade C is like, maybe a pass or what's expected, I'd probably have to borderline C, D kind of thing, just because of, one, Trent is at his absolute best. He is absolutely unplayable, and, he can run games from fullback. And, not that he hasn't done that at times this season, I thought in attack last week at Tottenham, there was a few, unbelievable balls that you just stare and you think, how has he managed to kind of pick that out from nothing? But I just think, just because of the level that we've seen of him, in recent years, as I say, one, he is at that level. He is the best fullback, I think England has ever seen. So that is purely just why his rating is so low, because he has been off that level. But like I say, I fully expect him, after a World Cup break, which I don't think sadly, I don't think he'll play much of a part in Qatar, and hopefully maybe that will benefit him and Liverpool come the second half of the season.
Yeah, so I think the break is a welcome time for many, many players. Well, Rich, I'll come back to you now. Then we're going to go to the other side of the pitch, the left-back position. I would grade Calvin Ramsey, but he's only played one at right-back, so we'll leave him for now. But left-back, we've seen a lot more of Kostas Tsimikas. He's had a pretty good season. Then, of course, Andy Robertson. He's hit good form of late after a somewhat slow start, hampered by injury, perhaps. So how do you think both the left-backs have gone this season?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of Andy Robertson. He did make a fairly poor start by his own standards, so it was no surprise really to see Tsimikas be given his opportunity, which I would say he is half taken. I think he is an able deputy for Robertson. It's great that we've got those two players, and we've seen situations where Tsimikas has been utilised more, particularly late in matches as well, when he's got Robertson available, whether it's fresh legs or providing a different impetus down that wing in an attacking sense. So I think they've both done well to a degree, but Robertson did make that poor start and has somewhat recovered that, because I think if he hadn't recovered it, he would have lost his place to Tsimikas for the foreseeable, and that hasn't happened. So that does show you an upturn, and there's no reason why that shouldn't be expected. He's not Scotland captain without merit, is he? And what he's done at Liverpool, and the effort that he's put in over those years, and the robustness that he shows are his great qualities. And thankfully, he seems to have got over that wobble and looks to be back to his best. So yes, Robbo has took his took his feedback in his homework diary, put it into action, and now looks okay to start every week. I think. In terms of a grading, I'd give him a C at this point.
And Simicast, what would you grade him as well?
Yeah, he can have a C as well. I think he's missed an opportunity. If I'm honest, I think he could have wrestled that place off Andy Robertson if he'd shone a bit more in the opportunities that he'd been given. He'd come on in games and done well when he's replaced him, but when he had the opportunities from the start, I don't think he really took the bull by the horns. So I'd still sort of put him on a par with Robertson, though, so he can have a C as well. But it could have been a better, much like my own GCSEs, it could have been better grades if he just applied himself a bit better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Simicast. I mean, we saw smatterings of him last season, and he's so impressive, and we really thought this could be the chance for him maybe to threaten Robbo's position, but he's just not quite taken it. I mean, he's done well enough, but yeah, nowhere near threatening enough to Robertson. I mean, we're going to move on now to the spine of the team. Now, I would love to go through each player individually, but this will end up being a 3 or 4 hour long podcast. So to speed things up, I'm going to ask you both to grade 2 centre-backs each. I'll come to you first, Keifer. I'm going to give you Ibrahima Konate and Virgil van Dijk, if you could grade those two this season so far.
Konate, I mean, you know, in terms of a debut season at the club go, I mean, he was, you know, fantastic last year, wasn't he? And, you know, I think it obviously gets forgotten about because of obviously what happened in Paris and the events around that night. But, you know, Konate was, you know, arguably Liverpool's best player. You know, he was absolutely brilliant, you know, against Vinicius Junior. And it's just a shame that he kind of sustained that knee injury against Strasbourg. So, you know, his season obviously didn't get off to the greatest of starts. Obviously, he was injured for, you know, 6 to 8 weeks kind of thing. You know, came back against Rangers. You know, obviously Liverpool, you know, defeated them well. Albeit it wasn't kind of the defensive test that, you know, he will be used to. Obviously, Rangers didn't really pose too much of a threat that night. And then, you know, again last week at Tottenham for his first league start of the campaign, you know, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. You know, I just think in terms of the way Liverpool want to play and getting the ball up the pitch quickly, he's just such an aggressive defender. And, you know, to deal with the attackers Spurs kind of have on show in terms of Harry Kane, who's a, you know, physical defender who will kind of back into you. I thought Konate was brilliant and, you know, was really effective in allowing Liverpool to kind of hit Spurs on the break and catch them out as they did for both goals. So Konate, I mean, it's a difficult one because obviously his sample size is so small, but I just based off what we've seen of him, I'd have to give him a B. You know, if he played more minutes, obviously it would obviously probably be an A given his form. But I just think obviously the game against Rangers was a bit of a no contest, and obviously he's only really had that game against Spurs. So a B, which I'm sure he'd be delighted with. And obviously got the call up to the World Cup squad with France. So you know, that's just a testament to kind of how well he has done, you know, since signing for Liverpool. In terms of his counterpart, Virgil van Dijk, he's probably another one who hasn't hit the heights that we've, you know, expected of him. You know, recovered from that ACL injury, didn't he? And again, played more than I think anyone would have expected of him last season, but has kind of been part of the collective defensive struggles this year. It's a difficult one because he has obviously been good. You know, he's had his moments, but, you know, there has been certain games, certain situations where I feel, you know, particularly, you know, again, to go back to that game at Old Trafford, you know, him and Milner did have kind of that altercation, didn't they, after the goal? Sancho's, I believe it was, you know, a lack of pressing. And I think maybe we've seen that at times this season. He's maybe been a bit too calm and too composed, and maybe, you know, in terms of, you know, when you compare him to Konate, who's kind of out there and, you know, aggressive and kind of in your face. Van Dijk, I'd probably give him a C. You know, he's not going to be Liverpool's player of the season this year. There's been far better performers, but arguably he's not going to be one who's been going to be getting digged out every week for poor performances. I think he's another one, you know, because of the high standards he set himself, you know, he probably falls victim to that at times this season. But again, you know, hopefully a change of scenery, you know, obviously going to his first major tournament with Holland now in the coming weeks, hopefully they can have a good tournament. And, you know, as a whole, you then hope that Liverpool can collectively push on after the international break and kind of have a bit more cohesion in defence, which they've shown signs of in recent weeks. But, you know, once they have their first choice partnership back of Konate and Van Dijk, you'd expect them to be all the stronger for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly Konate as well. It's going to be massive having him back. Hopefully, as a good World Cup for France, maybe get some minutes, or ideally for Liverpool fans, gets a bit of a rest because he might not be necessarily starting. And as for Van Dijk, I don't really want to question professional players' commitment, but I think a few players might have been playing at 80, 70% ahead of the World Cup, especially someone with a long-term injury history like Van Dijk has. Well, Rich, I'm going to come to you now then with the other two centre-halves. If Keith had the top set, of Canate and Van Dijk. You've got the middle set of Joel Matip and Joe Gomez. Perhaps a lot more negative feedback for those two, maybe?
Well, I'm not sure.
Maybe not Matip, yeah.
Maybe not Matip, yeah. I think Matip, I mean, Keifer's given Canate a B there off, as he said, quite limited playing time, but you're only as good as your last game, aren't you? So that's fair enough. Matip could be in that B section if he was more available. And you may think, well, that's a bit harsh because he's injured and he can't help that. But one of the most important things with a centre-back is being available, and the importance of that solidity and building a foundation in the centre of defence cannot be underestimated. And clearly Liverpool have leaked too many goals this season, and certainly early on in matches as well. That said, I do think Matip was looking like the natural partner for Van Dijk until he got injured. And now he's got a problem on his hands because Kanate's come back, looks the real deal. And I think he's going to have a job dislodging him, to be honest. So, yeah, Matip's done fine, but he needs to be available more. Simple as that. And it's a C for him. In terms of Gomez, we're keeping the school analogies going. I think Gomez may have an identical twin brother that he sends in on the days he fancies bunking off, perhaps because there's been such a difference in his performances. They've had a couple, I think it was Man City, was it, in particular, which was an imperious performance. And then you've had disasters like the likes of Napoli and others that we can mention. And I'm afraid to say, ultimately, they're the ones that will be remembered, not the performance against Manchester City. It was no real surprise for me to see him left out of the England World Cup squad. That level of consistency hasn't been demonstrated. Again, he's had limited opportunities, I suppose. If you look at his peer group there, he's up against some pretty good defenders. But let's not forget, he had that great partnership with Virgil van Dijk only couple of seasons ago, didn't he? So it's not like he comes without his own pedigree. But yeah, it just hasn't done it when he needed to. So it's a D for Gomez.
Yeah, I mean, we know there's such a good player there in Joe Gomez, but after 3 really serious long-term injuries in both knees, I mean, the future may not be as long as we'd hope for Gomez there. Well, anyway, let's move. God, sorry.
Sorry, but I was to say it's a brutal league, though, isn't it? You know what I mean?
It is a brutal league, yeah.
Time is ticking on, and a lot of Liverpool's legs and knees appear to be getting weary and tired. There's probably a bigger conversation there, but yeah, he may be another one of the fall guys of that situation.
Yeah, exactly. How long do you give players like that, unfortunately, for Joe Gomez? Well, let's move on then, straight into the midfield. We'll start at the base of it with you, Keifer. Fabinho has been relatively poor this season. He's probably come most under fire of any Liverpool player aside from Trent Alexander-Arnold. It's not been the best of seasons for him, has it?
No, it absolutely hasn't. Again, as you say, another Liverpool player is probably up there with Trent Alexander-Arnold in terms of receiving, an absolutely mass amount of criticism. And at times, obviously, it has probably been deserved this season. His performances obviously haven't been near to the level that we've become to expect of him. He has been another integral figure, to the success that Liverpool have enjoyed. But it's a weird one with Fabinho, isn't it? Because, he's never relied on his pace, and, you'd never say that he was the most athletic defender in the world, midfielder in the world. But, the worrying thing for me is that, he just his position seems to be all over the place. And, if he was a young athletic midfielder, and he'd lost his legs, after a series of injuries, be fair enough. But, his positioning was the one thing that kind of stood him above the rest of, defensive midfielders in the world. He was, if you compare him to someone like Casemiro, who's more of an enforcer and someone who kind of relied on these heavy challenges. Fabinho was just always there, tiptoeing around the midfield and kind of just always that security blanket, and kind of allowed those further forward to kind of do their job so successfully in the final third. But that just hasn't been there this season, and I don't know if there's a change in role or what. He just seems to be further up the field, and Liverpool do seem to be getting caught out. And again, I'm not sure what that's down to, because, even when they started with the 4-3-3 this season, that still seemed to happen. And then obviously there was, switches to, double pivots with Thiago and Henderson. And then even then, there was still gaps in midfield. So it is a really weird one. And I'm not sure if there's, again, a hangover from last season. But, in terms of Fabinho, obviously he did have that injury, didn't he? And he was obviously rushed back for the Champions League final. Obviously it was a hamstring injury. And history will tell you that, he's a bit of a slow starter, isn't he, when he comes back from injury. think it was 2019, 2020. He got that. I think it was a ligament injury against Napoli, and it felt like it wasn't until that lockdown game against Crystal Palace that he really kind of came back into his own and started dominating the midfield again. So, he's another one who you're hoping that maybe a change of scenery and maybe a different voice and just a different landscape for a couple of weeks might do him the world of good, because he has been the shadow of the player that he has been in recent years, and he's so important. Liverpool don't have a player like him in their squad, so with the likes of Elliott and Thiago and Henderson, whilst they're all different midfielders, you can kind of change your midfield to kind of suit them and kind of the way you want to play. But with Fabinho, he is literally the only kind of one. You could argue that Henderson can do a job in the six, but again, his legs are going, and he's a player who does obviously rely more on his athleticism. So it is a really concerning one, especially given that he signed that new contract last summer, that long-term contract. So you'd hope for his sake and for Liverpool's sake that he is able to kind of turn that around, because like I say, he's he's on his day, when he's fit and firing and kind of doing that job that we've seen him do for so many years. For me, he's again one of the best in the world in his position. In terms of grades, I feel dead harsh, but I probably have to give him a D. I just think, again, another one who's kind of set the standards so high that he's again a victim of that level and that bar that he's set. Because when he's not playing at that level, it is so noticeable, and the drop off for Liverpool is so noticeable. So again, like I say, hopefully he can pick up that form that we've seen him after the World Cup, and be fit and firing again, because like you touched on earlier, Pat, I do feel that there's probably a couple of players who may have been nursing injuries, but with the World Cup on the horizon, maybe they didn't want to admit that. So, I think that is certainly interesting, because I do have a theory that once the World Cup is over, we might see a backlog of, players actually pulling up with injuries or having surgeries that they were advised to get, pre the World Cup. So, I'm not suggesting that's the case with Fabinho, but, maybe he hasn't being given the rest that he wants because he's been wanting to play his way into the Brazil squad. So certainly an interesting one with him, and like I say, hopefully he can just get back to that form.
Yeah, it's such a difficult one because we want to tiptoe around it. I don't really want to call players out for their commitment, but I think in some it's kind of clear to see without wanting to fully commit to that myself. Well, as I said before, we're going to have to speed things up. We can't go through every player, unfortunately. I'm sure we're going to want to talk plenty about the attackers, but I'm going to stay with the midfield with you, Rich. I'm going to give you a trio to talk us through. So unfortunately, you're going to have to try and speed through as quick as you can. But we've got Thiago, Jordan Henderson and James Milner for you to discuss. What are you grading those three, and how do you think they've gone so far this season?
Okay. Thiago probably been Liverpool's best midfielder, certainly in terms of control, if not in terms of energy, which probably isn't his game anyway, but is a wider Liverpool problem at the moment. But he's great to watch, isn't he? And if you were picking a midfield trio or quartet, if you were that way inclined, from what players you have available, I think it goes without saying that he's going to be in everyone's. And yeah, I'd like to see maybe just to get a few more assists or greater goal contributions perhaps, but in terms of his actual control in the middle, I think overall he's done a pretty good job, and I'll give him a C. Jordan Henderson started to be marginalised in this Liverpool side, which you could argue is a bit surprising given that he's the team captain and one of the most experienced players in the squad. But I did kind of question this a bit earlier in the season, but it's now become so apparent the sort of lack of legs Liverpool have got in midfield. Something's got to give, and it appears to be in a lot of cases Jordan Henderson. Again, he's been steady enough when he's come in, so but nothing greater than that. So another C for Jordan, I think. James Milner. I have to treat differently because we're talking about a man who's nearly 37 and signed a new contract and probably expected to have a bit of a bit part to play this season as he tried to contribute to a successful campaign. What he's actually done is basically play every week, which surely no one really envisaged. But whether you think he was the right man to be able to do that and push Liverpool forward. The bottom line is that he hasn't let anyone down at any point. With Henderson not being in the team as much as well, his experience has been crucial. And all of a sudden, you look at that 1 year contract extension, you look at it from at one point maybe being a bit of a favour from Jurgen Klopp. In this current situation, it almost looks essential, and I certainly didn't see myself saying that. So it's a B for me for James Milner. Maybe it's just as the elder statesman's union. I could have even gone to an A with him, but he hasn't. Obviously, I don't want to get too carried away here. He's not been playing at the performance levels of someone like Alisson or that. But it's a solid B for Milner, who's shown that even in trying times and with younger players coming through, he's still got what it takes. Incredible.
Yeah, agree with all those ratings. I think they're very fair. And as for Milner as well, I mean, especially the first couple of months of the season, he was absolutely huge and sort of steadying the ship, because the midfield was in a complete mess, if we're being totally honest, wasn't it? So very well done from him, and deservedly a B, I think. Well, Keifer, going to give you two more midfielders, the youngsters, in Harvey Elliott, who's been sort of playing in a deeper role perhaps this season rather than his preferred number 10, and Fabio Carvalho, the latest signing, who's sometimes found himself out on the left wing. How do you think both those youngsters have gone? Carvalho, his first term as a Liverpool player, has he impressed you?
Yeah, he has. He's probably another one I'd probably put in that Milner category of has played far more than I think anyone expected him to play once he signed. And that is probably at times, I think, his performances have been a bit up and down. But that's obviously natural given he's just moved to a club like Liverpool. He's obviously getting used to how Liverpool play. And like I say, I don't think Klopp would have would have. He's basically been forced to play him at times, and that's obviously been apparent. So it is a difficult one to kind of rate him. But I would, he obviously gets the winner at Newcastle, doesn't he? In early August, which was obviously Liverpool's, following up that 9-0 victory over Bournemouth. It felt like one of, a few turning points we've had this season. Ultimately, it turned out not to be one, but at the time it felt huge, and it was a massive goal for him. But even just that night, obviously coming on as a sub, it was him and Elliott was absolutely running midfield, and that's something that we've seen from him. I think he probably has been better as coming off the bench as an impact sub, with his energy and he's fearless, isn't he? He's kind of like Elliott in that respect of like he doesn't really care who he's up against, and he just kind of drives at them. And I think that is really refreshing with young players. And sometimes you have to harness that in different ways in terms of sometimes saying less is more, and maybe something that we've seen with Elliott in recent weeks that I think his decision making has really improved. But obviously with Carvalho, maybe that maturity, and obviously getting used to the Liverpool system is also still coming, which is, like I say, is not a problem given I think the profile of the player we signed. Like I say, played loads at Fulham last year, but again, the step up to Liverpool is a big one. But he's done well, and he's played well, and I think everyone who's watched him play this season knows there's a talent there, knows there's a player for the future. So it's a difficult one again. Probably say a C rating on a B, maybe, on the borderline. Again, he's not let anyone down, and his performances have been impressive, but he probably hasn't played in the games, in some of the games he has played. Like, he was good at Rangers, good at Newcastle, but then like I think against Derby, the other night he wasn't great, which was maybe a game that obviously you would have expected him to play before the season, and up against bigger opponents, I thought he did struggle a bit. And then obviously when you look at someone like Ben Doku who comes on and he's 16 years of age and kind of just fronts these League One players like he did, it kind of just shows you that there is a bit of a teething process to go through with Carvalho. But again, like I say, he's been a fantastic acquisition, and I'm sure he'll be a Liverpool player for many years to come. In terms of Elliott, I mean, I absolutely adore him. I think he's absolutely brilliant. He's probably behind Alisson. I'd probably say behind Alisson in terms of Liverpool's player of the season so far. I think the early weeks of the season, again, another one who was playing far more than anyone would have expected him to play. Obviously, given the injuries to Thiago and to Henderson, and obviously Milner's kind of, profile within the squad as, a player who shouldn't be starting every week, but was obviously forced to. But then I think, over the last 6-7 weeks as players have returned, Elliott has really got that place on merit now. And it's not a case of, oh yeah, people are injured. It's a case of, this lad can play, and this lad is, bringing something different to the midfield. As Rich touched on then, it has looked leggy at times, but, with him and his kind of athleticism, it's just refreshing. And it's just, I think, if you look at how Liverpool have set up in recent years, and they have been quite conservative in midfield, and it's kind of been we'll provide the platform, and you lads up front just do the business. I think it's refreshing to see someone like Elliott go and join in with that kind of fun. And his ball yesterday for Nunez's first was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, if that's Kevin De Bruyne, I didn't watch much of the day last night, but if that's Kevin De Bruyne, there's people don't stop talking about it for weeks, kind of thing. And I think it's a testament to Elliott that there was even murmurs of him potentially getting an England call up to the World Cup. This is a lad who was missed 6 months of the season last year, and just the way he's come back. Last season wasn't how he would have expected it to go, in terms of Liverpool were playing so many games, and there just wasn't a perfect chance to drop him in. But the way he's kind of bounced back this season with his maturity, and I think again that shows the other night. He's only 19 years of age, but he takes the penalty against Derby. Steps up and kind of makes himself counted for. So he's another one whose potential is scary. And another kind of final point is just worth remembering that this lad isn't a centre midfielder by trade. He's kind of had to learn this on the job. If we're using school terms, this is his post-16 apprenticeship, and he's absolutely flown with it. And there was, again, that performance in Napoli, which I don't think anyone really came out with any credit with, but he did struggle on that right hand side. But he's put that right, and those reports, wasn't there, that he'd kind of been working on his game with Linders and from a tactical aspect, and I think that's really telling, and you've really been able to see the kind of fruits to that labour in recent weeks. So in terms of Elliott, I'm going to give him an A. I think that I'd probably bump Alisson up to an A star, but I think Elliott has, he's been absolutely phenomenal. And like I say, it is just scary to think how good this lad can be in years to come, when, maybe he does find that natural position, because, like I say, he's, maybe that centre mid role isn't his long term, but he's doing a fantastic job at it at the moment. But yeah, he's just a brilliant footballer, and one who gets you up off your seat. And I think that's the reason why people go and watch the football at the end of the day. So I don't think you can ask for much more than that.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Such a high ceiling. It's nice as well to see him burst through, because I haven't really had this attacking midfield. He bursts forward since Gini Wijnaldum. It's something that has been lacking, definitely. Liverpool have been arguably worse since Wijnaldum left this season, but the future looks promising, because he can become that player that will burst forward and make things happen. Well, anyway, speaking of bursting forward, we're now going into the most exciting part of the gradings. Of course, we're moving into the attack. I'm going to leave out Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota. They both had decent starts to the season, but with their long-term injuries, I don't think it'd be very fair to grade them. So, Rich, I'm going to come to you first with the big one. Mohamed Salah, his season so far. He started in a more creative, wide role, should we say, but it's a bit of a slow start, but the goals have finally started coming. So has that affected your grading of him at all?
Well, if you mean as it made it more positive, yes. He scored 16 goals this season in all competitions, including appearances for Egypt. It's not bad, is it? Not a bad footballer. Apparently had a slow start to the season. Liverpool had a slow start to the season, didn't they? We're doing a lot of things not right. There's been some change. They've lost Mane. They've had a problem finding the correct balance. The midfield's been disjointed. We've seen Salah wide a lot, particularly in those sort of early stages, and that was a problem for a bit. Now all of a sudden it's not a problem, and they've just found a bit more rhythm. But the key of all that is Mohamed Salah, and the goals are flowing now. Didn't get one yesterday, and that will annoy him, because I think he's hungry now. And if there was any player who probably doesn't want this World Cup break, by virtue of the fact that he's not going to it, it would be Mohamed Salah, wouldn't it? He wants to kick on now and show what he's shown for years. But I think he's right back where he was, where he started. To be honest with you, I've got certainly no concerns about him. He's one of the most dangerous players on the pitch, one of Liverpool's best performers. So I'm happy with Salah. If you're going to give Harvey Elliott an A, then there's no reason why you wouldn't give Mohamed Salah an A. I'll say that now. Maybe I'm a slightly harsher. You could possibly give him a B, but you've set the standard now, Keifer. So I'm going to give Salah an A. Yes, he did. He has recovered from that sort of slow start to the season, but his class has come to the top for long enough now to say that yes, he's been one of Liverpool's best performers.
Yeah, couldn't agree. I think an A is definitely fair. I mean, he's the top scorer in the Champions League. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he is the top scorer in that competition. So that says all that needs to be said. That player needs to have an A. Well, Keifer, we're going to move on to you now as well then. Roberto Firmino. He's found his goal-scoring form once again. He's in a very, very good vein of form, actually. His contract's expiring. Now, has he made a case for himself to deserve an extension, or do you think he needs to do a little bit more maybe off the ball?
It's a weird one because if you'd asked me maybe 6 weeks ago, I think particularly the Brighton game, I would have said the latter. I think he would have needed to do more off the ball, and obviously Liverpool have dabbled with different systems, haven't they, in recent weeks, and we've seen him uptake different positions, which I think again in itself is another asset that he brings to Liverpool in terms of his versatility and being able to do that job, behind the striker, and obviously, he's been able to accommodate kind of Darwin Nunez' his start to life at Liverpool, which, shouldn't go unnoticed. But, in recent weeks, he seems to, aside from getting the goals, his all-round performance seems to be better. I mean, yesterday, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. He sets up the third, doesn't he? Well, he gets the pre-assist, if that's what we want to call it. He slides through Andy Robertson, who then, slides through Darwin Nunez, who pokes at home. So, he's just a really classy footballer on his day, and he is one of a kind. And obviously Liverpool kind of moved in a different direction, haven't they, with the signing of Darwin Nunez, and Salah more recently taking that position down the middle. So maybe Firmino's days appear to be numbers, and obviously there was rumours linking him with Juventus in the summer. How credible that kind of interest was kind of remains to be seen. But I think going forward, I would be surprised if Liverpool didn't offer him a contract extension. I know Klopp said the other day, didn't he, that it's something that they were talking about and maybe looking and exploring the possibilities of with both parties. And I think obviously Wisey will be disappointed not to go to the World Cup. I think if from a Liverpool point of view, it's probably the perfect. The perfect remedy, isn't it, for the second half of the season? It probably brings the curtain down on his Brazil career, which, if you look at how well he's done at club level, he probably hasn't got that recognition on the international stage because he's such a unique player. But yeah, I would be looking to give him an extension, just like I say, just because of his form. And you think kind of where Liverpool would be without those goals, and in the early weeks of the season when obviously Nunez was suspended and maybe finding life a bit difficult, and obviously Salah was playing out wide and certainly not the best version of himself. Firmino, I think he's already outscored his Prem tally from last year. I think he got 5, and he's already on 7 or 8 now. So the proof's in the pudding, really. That he after a difficult season last year with numerous injuries and kind of breaking momentum at key points, he's certainly fired back. And I don't know if a point in that is psychologically, obviously with the World Cup coming up, was he trying to play himself into the squad, or was he looking at his contract and maybe he wants to be at Liverpool, and why not? He there's every chance he could add a couple of more medals to his collection over if he was to stay another year or two. And I don't think anyone would have any qualms about seeing a Roberto Firmino come off the bench as an option here and there, and maybe be relegated to a squad player. So yeah, I think it's been a good couple of months for him. I think he's reminded everyone of his qualities after a difficult season. In terms of a grade, give him a B, I think, just because I know he's got the goals and stuff, but I just think he at times early on in the season his effectiveness off the ball wasn't there. But I think, like I said, as recently as yesterday, the example has been that Firmino's, whilst he might not be hitting the heights he once hit in a Liverpool shirt, he's certainly he's certainly not going out without a fight, is he? And whether he gets that contract or not remains to be seen. But he's certainly been one of Liverpool's most impressive performers this season. So yeah, he gets a B for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, for me, he's such a strange and difficult player to mark. So I'm being brutally honest, I don't think he's actually played that well this season, particularly in build-up playing off the ball. I think he's been very poor at times and not really done much. But he scored, as you said, he's got 7 goals and 3 assists in 13 Premier League games, which is very, very good numbers. And they've been quite big goals as well. Some have been very important. So it's a really strange season for him. But anyway, let's move on to the last player of the season, the big one. I'm going to come to you both on this, so don't worry, Keifer. Rich, I'll come to you first. Darwin Nunez, he's going to be the talk of this podcast. How are you rating his first term as a Liverpool player?
I'm so glad that you're going to both of us on this, because I think you might get very different views. Keifer's already told me that he would go to war for Darwin Nunez. It's an unbelievable claim. So I'm not sure I'm quite ready to sign up for national service for Uruguay just yet in that respect. But, Darwin Nunez, yeah, what can you say? I mean, the first and foremost, I thought he played really well yesterday, and he played really well against Tottenham. So there is clear signs of big improvement now, and he's starting to look more like a Liverpool player, and that's really pleasing because I have had serious doubts about him. And what I've sort of come to accept now is that he's never going to be as skillful a player as Sadio Mane or Mohamed Salah or Luis Diaz. He's very different in his attributes, but that does not mean that they're any less effective as long as they're applied in the right way. His decision making now has started to improve. He demonstrated that by the way he set up Salah last week against Tottenham, where he was in an area where we've kind of become accustomed to the fact that he's just going to shoot. And he didn't. And what's happened? Liverpool took the lead in the game, and then yesterday was probably certainly his most comfortable match. I think for Liverpool, and particularly in that first half, he was rampant, wasn't he? And he's exciting, and people like him. And he's a passionate player, and he's committed to what he's doing. So all those signs are there. I do think he has struggled up until recently, just to bed in, and really made me question: has he actually got the necessary abilities to be a Liverpool player at this unbelievable high bar that's been set? There's no doubt he's a top footballer and a Champions League footballer, but Liverpool have been playing a slightly different game to a number of other teams for quite a few years now, and it's a tough act to follow, isn't it? But he's absolutely getting there, and I think now with his recent performances, he's definitely got a bit of credit in the bank now if things don't go his way from time to time. So I'm going to give Nunez a C. If you'd asked me a month ago, it probably would have been a bit lower. But the signs are now positive, and that is a C. That's a good C, which I can see rising.
Yeah, raising a few eyebrows there, definitely, Rich, as well. You've kept up your self-proclaimed title of harsh marker. I'm sure Keifer's probably going to disagree with that grade there. Keifer, what are your views on Darwin's start to the season? I mean, it's been inconsistent at times, should we say, but he's surely showing the signs now that he can become a better player than a C.
Yeah, no. First of all, I think everything Rich says is absolutely spot on. I think every point you made, it has been a difficult start for him, and I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we said we all didn't have that bit of doubt. Especially after the red card against Palace. Was this going to be another hothead? And then obviously after that, Liverpool season kind of, not because of the red card, but it kind of unravelled with the games at Old Trafford, where you're thinking, God, you'd be crying out for a focal point here. And obviously then they draw the derby and stuff like that. And they didn't get the results that they were needed. And then obviously Klopp didn't obviously play him for a couple of weeks, even when he did return from suspension. So you were thinking, oh God, there were certain games where you thought you would have thrown him in, and perhaps he wasn't. And then when he was coming on, he was snatching at chances. I remember in the Ajax game, Cop End, to seal the game. Also, I think Liverpool 1-1 at the time, and dragged it wide, and you just think, have another touch, or get your head up, or like Rich says, just look for that pass, or just do something apart from drag it wide when Liverpool need a goal. But it kind of seems like that goal at Rangers, what was it, a month ago now, 6 weeks ago, seems to really have kickstarted is kind of turning form. And I think the signs before there had been, that he was a handful, and maybe he was a bit of a, like Richard says, he was just a different striker, and just in terms of his qualities were different, and you didn't really know what you were going to get from him. And I don't think opposition defenders really know how to deal with him. But then obviously he gets the goal, and then now he's kind of followed up with really good performances. And I think yesterday was by far his best performance in a Liverpool shirt in terms of most comfortable. His decision making was a lot better. He looked more composed with himself. And whilst I think it's good to have that edge, in terms of, if you look at someone like Suarez, maybe took it too far. But I think at times, to play within yourself, I think it is a good factor. But I think there was a bit of a scuffle in the derby game with one of their defenders and on the ground, and he kind of just reined it in last minute, where you thought maybe he was going to have a bit of a heated exchange with him. But that kind of maturity that he's kind of shown in these kind of last couple of months is obviously a huge testament to kind of the development he's made. But yeah, yesterday I thought the second half I didn't think they used him as well as they perhaps could have. I thought he was isolated out, and maybe on another day he could have got a hat trick. But I just thought those kind of runs, those darting runs infield that he was making in the first half, they just weren't really there in the second half. And whether that's because Southampton change tactics or whatever. But I think he's certainly a player now that Liverpool fans can go into the World Cup break with, at ease and kind of watching from afar with Uruguay. And just kind of wish him all the best. I mean, they've got a good squad, and probably they're certainly my outsiders, for the Qatar. But yeah, you're just hoping the second half of the season that he can kind of pick up that form again, because like with Rich says, with Salah, he's probably another one who's probably gutted. Even though he is going to compete in his first World Cup, he is probably gutted that the breaks come, because it feels like he has kind of found a bit of an equilibrium in terms of just being able to his teammates playing with him and he's kind of playing with his teammates. So yeah, his goal return speaks for itself. I mean, when you kind of look at the narrative, and again another one I kind of compare to Trent Alexander-Arnold in terms of this media narrative. I'm not really sure where, in an age of social media, where it has blown up from, in terms of kind of everyone just getting on his back after that Palace red card. And, it does seem to have quietened down now, which, is a testament to him and how he's kind of silenced that out and blocked it out. But also, it kind of says how well he has done and the performances that he has put in, that people aren't speaking about him. And obviously the big caveat to all this is, a certain Erling Haaland. I think if in a world where Erling Haaland isn't playing in the Premier League, it would be the narrative and kind of the assessment of Nunez's first 5 or 6 months in England will be completely different. And that's obviously just, because you're looking at in Haaland a generational talent who's probably going to smash, if he stays in the Premier League for as long as he wants, he's probably going to smash every record that there is. So I think obviously those comparisons obviously really didn't help him, especially after the Community Shield and stuff. But like I say, he's kind of shown that maturity to put those behind him, and they haven't really got to him. And like I say, he's been fantastic, and that was absolutely summed up yesterday in his performance. So after that, with Rich giving him a C, I'll be a bit nicer. I'll give him a B. But like I say, I think there is still room for improvement, and I think even though his goal tally of what's he got 10 goals, whatever he's got, 10. I think there's certainly, I think we could be. There's no reason why we couldn't be looking at 15 with some of the chances he has had, which is a big thing. But like I say, if you can just add that composure, keep that composure, for the rest of the season and hopefully the rest of his Liverpool career, I think Liverpool are looking at a really complete number 9 and one that can hopefully lead them to trophies in the years to come.
Just on that point as well about his goals, which ultimately is what he's there for, isn't he? He's had this sort of a period where he's had to try and adjust to being a Premier League footballer, but he has scored 10 goals. Richarlison went to Spurs for 60 million and he scored in 1 game. So, and he's an established Premier League player. So, in terms of his actual goal return, you can't really have too many complaints. I don't think it's just adapting to becoming that Liverpool player and making those right decisions. But it looks like he's getting there.
And as well, just a final point to jump in. Again, a really good point from Rich. I think as well, he obviously while adapting to the Premier League, which is hard enough in any given season, I think another point is that he was adapting to a Liverpool team that just was having an identity crisis and was so dysfunctional. I think you look at the kind of impacts that Diaz and Jota have made in recent years, and the 2 big kind of forward signings Liverpool have made, they've all come and hit the ground running, whilst Liverpool have been firing on all cylinders. So I think that's obviously a massive caveat to kind of the way he's perceived, because like I said, this Liverpool team is certainly not at the peak of its powers. It's showing signs of maybe getting back up there, but he's certainly not playing in a Liverpool team full of confidence, and that's obviously shown, and he hasn't obviously got the service that perhaps others have had in recent years. So I think as Rich says, he scored 10 goals, which in the Premier League is no easy feat.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think we all know there's a potential 30-goal a season striker in there. It's just going to take him some time to adjust and time to mature as well and stop headbutting people, which he looks to have done now. He seems much more calm, as you mentioned, Keifer. Not getting involved in Derby in the week shows that hopefully we're going to see no more of that. Well, now it's time for the last question of the pod. We're going to keep it short and sweet for you both. I'm going to ask you to grade Liverpool's season as a whole so far, your player of the season so far, and the player with the most work to do. So, Rich, we'll come to you first. Who are you giving for those then?
them already. No, in terms of a grading so far for the season, it's almost a two-part, a bit like double science. Remember that? Because in terms of the Premier League, I don't think you can look any better than a D. Whereas in the Champions League, you're pretty much an A, aren't you? Apart from that, that one blip in Napoli, but that can happen, can't it? They've still coasted through the group without any issues whatsoever. So I don't know if I can if I get a blend on that, I might end up with a C. But if it is a C, it's a low C, I think, because we know there's a lot more to come from Liverpool. They're an A-star students, aren't they? So go on, I'll go with a C, but a low scoring one. So that's that. Player of the season so far. Yeah, I think you'd have to say Alisson in terms of his consistency. It might not be the most exciting pick, a goalkeeper, when you've got a rich array of attacking talent at your disposal. But just, Salah's coming good now, and as we've discussed at length, we're beginning to see more of Nunez, with more to come, I'm sure. But at this point in the season, he's been the one who's been the outstanding performer week in, week out. So I'll go with Alisson. And I can't remember what your other question was, Pat. You're going to have to remind me.
The player who's got the most work to do, do you think, for the second half of the season? Who has the most to improve on?
Oh, wow. That is tricky, isn't it? I mean, the names are put in the hat there would be Trent, Fabinho, and then you've got sort of outliers like, obviously, Nunez has needed to improve. I'm not quite as all in on Harvey Elliott as Keifer is, even though I like him. I think he's had a problem with end product and being effective in matches, and probably by virtue of his tender years. But so he's got plenty to work on in that respect. He was brilliant yesterday. What a ball for that goal. But I guess really, the higher the standards you set for yourself, the harder it is to maintain them. So Fabinho and Trent are ones who've got a bit to answer. And just to take a little bit of pressure off Trent, I'll go with Fabinho, because that midfield is an important area for Liverpool. And if they can get a grip of that situation in there, then matches in particular, are going to look a lot different. I'm getting a bit tired of teams coming to Anfield and being quite comfortable controlling midfield areas for periods of the game. And if Fabinho's part of that midfield, then maybe he needs to step it up a bit. So I'll go with him.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's try and save the bit of pressure on Trent Alexander-Arnold. Keifer, are you similarly aligned to Rich, or do you have a different take on this?
No, I think, again, everything that you said was spot on. Liverpool's season is split into the two competitions, really, isn't it? In terms of what I would give the season overall, I mean, yeah, whilst they, had a few false dawns, but, it does appear now that they have turned this corner, and that isn't because they aren't playing a game for 6 weeks. There has been a few decent performances. That win at Tottenham, especially with them winning yesterday, looks, like a massive win. But ultimately they are 8 points off fourth place and about 13 off the top of the table. So given kind of how good Liverpool have been in recent years, and kind of even if they weren't at the top of the table, I don't think anyone have too many complaints. But the fact they are 8 points behind Newcastle United side, and whilst they have had to take over their side, apart from the likes of Trippier, Gomes, and Dan Burn, and that Isak up front, it's largely the same side that was under Bruce. So for Liverpool to be 8 points behind them at this stage of the season, albeit with the game in hand, I think obviously is really disappointing. So I think obviously on that perspective, you would have to kind of be looking at a D, I think, for their grade, really, because if Liverpool aren't challenging for the title, the absolute bare minimum is to secure Champions League football. We know obviously how vital that is in terms of Liverpool's self-sustaining project. So if Liverpool weren't to get in the Champions League, especially given the contracts they have given out, it would be a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, I would have to grade that a D, I think. In terms of player of the season, again, I would go Alisson, but to maybe be different. I know Rich said that he's maybe had a problem with end product, and whilst I do agree with that, I'm going to go Harvey Elliott. I just think in terms of the way he was thrown in at the start of the season, and kind of his performances, and like I say, you know, even against City, you know, arguably the best team in Europe, you know, the way he kind of handled himself against those midfielders, you know, he's played obviously big European games, and I just think if you kind of take it further back to last season and kind of how disappointing that was for him, just in the way he's bounced back, and obviously yesterday felt like a pretty crowning performance for him, you know, before the World Cup. And you know, his obviously stock has kind of, I think obviously everyone, you know, connected with Liverpool obviously rates him so highly, but now you're starting to see people outside of the Liverpool sphere talking about him and his potential and his development, and you know, where he could lie in the international scene in the coming years. So I think that's obviously a testament to how well he has done. So obviously behind Alisson, it was a toss-up between Elliott and Salah, but I just think obviously Salah wins it every year, so I'll give it someone different. And what was the final question? Who's got more to do?
Where were the most work to do for the second half of the season?
Yeah, again, Rich hit the nail on the head. It has to be Fabinho, but if I am going to say someone different, it'd be a bit of a curveball shot. But I'm going to say Joe Gomez, purely just because I think he is at a bit of a crossroads in his Liverpool career at the moment. I think obviously he got the new contract into early in the summer, and while I'm absolutely not suggesting that Liverpool are going to, you know, cash in on him or anything. I just think, you know, maybe for him, you know, this season was, you know, maybe he didn't expect to play as much as he has done, and he has been a bit. That's kind of weird. He has been fortunate that Konate and Matip have been out injured. You know, he has had more games and he has played bigger games than he would have expected, because, you know, he was well and truly down the pecking order, wasn't he, last season? But, you know, I think with Gomez, it's so disappointing because of the nature of his mistakes and you know, maybe those lapses in concentration that are clouding, you know, the things that he's doing well in terms of the way he battled against Manchester City. You know, he was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't he, for 90 minutes? But then, you know, not to follow that up and kind of the way they lost to Forest and even giving away the penalty at West Ham and the goal with Leeds and stuff like that. I just think he has let himself down a bit. And it's only because I think everyone remembers how good him and Van Dijk were together, you know, in 2019, 2020. You know, there was a fantastic partnership there, and I think people were obviously looking at him and Konate and thinking, you know, Liverpool have got a defensive partnership here for the ages and for years to come. But you know, that doesn't appear to be the case, and I just think, you know, I think like Rich says, if he'd got into the World Cup squad, I think he would have maybe been counting himself, you know, very fortunate, because I don't think he would have necessarily deserved it. But then neither has Harry Maguire, so that's an entirely different conversation. But I just think, you know, again, even looking at that, I think that was a massive missed opportunity for him, because, you know, you look at the form of, you know, players like Maguire, you know, obviously Kyle Walker's injured. You know, it felt like there was so many openings in terms of that Gareth Southgate squad, and he just wasn't able to capitalise on it. And I think that maybe underlines his frustrations. And you know, like I say, he's a fantastic centre half on his day, but it kind of just seems to be those little mistakes and those kind of lapses of judgment that seem to be costing him. And you know, with Konate in the form that he's in, and obviously with Matip, you know, when fit, doing you know, a more than astute job at the back, I just think, you know, Gomez could easily find himself as fourth choice centre half, you know, when the season resumes in late December, and then obviously having committed for another 4 or 5 years, you know, he's got to ask himself some pretty big questions in terms of, you know, heading into his prime and stuff like that. He has missed an awful lot of football, it has to be said, in recent years. So, you know, the last thing he wants to do now, whilst he is fit, is sit on the bench. So I just think, you know, not whilst it's do or die for his Liverpool career, but I certainly think the next 18 months could be, you know, one where maybe the club and him look at it and just think, you know, is this going to be the best solution for all parties? I know Liverpool would obviously be happy to keep him on the books, but whether Gomez would be happy to stay as a fourth choice and maybe waste that talent that, you know, we all know that he does have is another question. So yeah, I think Gomez is my player who I really would like to see kick on in the second half of the season and kind of recapture that form and maybe just be a bit more consistent with it, and hopefully with Liverpool being more consistent in midfield, it, you know, links back to what Rich said, you know, having more control in home games and stuff like that. I think, you know, that's only going to help the defence, isn't it? And make them a bit more assured. So, you know, fingers crossed Gomez can benefit from that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good shout. I mean, I think we're all in agreement that this is the crossroads in his Liverpool career. This is his make or break season. As long as he stays fit, which he seems to be doing so far. Otherwise, a move away might be the best thing for him and his England career, which I presume he'll want to keep up. Well, anyway, we'll leave it there. Keifer and Rich, thank you very much for joining me. I'm sure you'll be going to the staff room to continue your Harvey Elliott argument afterwards.
Well, I expect to find an apple there for Elliott on Keifer's desk as soon as he goes in.
Yeah, nice little love letter from him as well. And thank you to all of you as well for watching and listening along. Be sure to let us know your thoughts and your grades as well in the Blood Red YouTube comment section. We'll eagerly anticipate those. And I'm sure you've got plenty to disagree with us on in that one, which we look forward to reading as well. But from myself, Patrick Smith, Keifer MacDonald, and Rich Garnett, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with you for another episode of the Agenda Podcast sometime soon. But for now, it's goodbye.